Welcome one and all back to the Damage Report. I am Iadarola. Jayar Jackson joins us as always. Jayar, thank you for being here.
Absolutely. How you guys doing?
Glad to have you here. Big day in the news. We do have a lot of news that we are going to be talking about, of course, including all of the insanity that happened on the 4th of July, fireworks claiming multiple lives. Nobody's surprised by that. Bad news for Ron DeSantis, bad news potentially for Harvard, and a whole lot more. Before we jump into all the news though, I do want to address a few things. So we've been doing the Damage Report for a number of years. And I know that there's probably a lot of you out there in the audience who have been watching for a number of years. And it's very easy for me to assume, I get sort of caught up in the bubble of that I just assume that everyone knows, what I think, where I stand on literally everything. I'm obviously not shy talking about certain things, and it's easy to assume that everybody knows what I think and where I stand on everything. But I try to remember that every day there are people who start watching the show or start paying attention to politics, or maybe theoretically hear things that make them think that I or other people have positions that we might or might not have. And so a little bit of clarification probably is not the worst idea every once in a while, especially with the internet being a place where there's such an overabundance of information that it's very easy to be misinformed or disinformed. So just to be clear, so this is the Damage Report. It's a show that's on a network, but I do want to be very clear that I, Iadarola, speak for myself and no one else. I don't speak for Jayar, when he's a co-host. We might agree on a lot. We do agree on a lot. I don't speak for him. I don't speak for anyone else on the network. Both the people that you see, in front of the camera, as well as the far more people that are behind the camera. I have a lot of awesome people on my team that make this show possible. And I like to hope that they agree with a good amount of the stuff that I say, but I don't speak for them. And the corollary to that is that no one else speaks for me except for me. I'm myself, I'm a man, I can determine what I say and everything. So I agree with the vast majority of what commentators and hosts on this network say about a lot of different issues. Most of the people, most of the time, but not everything. And that has always been the case, and it remains the case. And similarly, they probably disagree with me on quite a lot too. And so it's important for me to be clear about what I think so that those misunderstandings are kept to an absolute minimum. So to be clear on certain issues, which have been driving a lot of social media conversation, it would be easy for me to assume that people know where I stand, for instance, on issues having to do with the trans community, because we obviously talk a lot about those issues. I don't know exactly how many videos we've made over the past 4 years that we've been doing the show. I would guess hundreds at the very least, but that doesn't mean that everybody has seen those, or that doesn't think that perhaps they are no longer reflective of what I think. So just to clarify, I believe that trans men are men, trans women are women, and the trans community and trans individuals deserve our respect, compassion, empathy, support, and representation. That's what I think in general, and I have always tried to use my platform to advance those values, but also to make clear what I think about specific issues that might affect that community. Of course, I am a person. I have more than a few faults, flaws, and areas of ignorance that I believe I have a lifelong duty to try to minimize as much as possible. But on specific issues, I will say that I have always been supportive of a variety of different types of gender affirming care, including hormone replacement therapy. But more importantly than my actual support for those against an ongoing assault in state legislatures around the country from Republicans, I also believe that it's not the sort of thing that even I should be talking about. Side effects for a medication, that's for doctors and families to speak about. I will talk about it when necessary, but I also believe that the overwhelming consensus of doctors is what should drive that. So just to be clear about that, when it comes to sports, I have always been incredibly supportive of people playing for the sports teams that match their gender identity. I don't believe that the vast majority of people that have made this such a big issue over the past few years truly care about women's sports literally at all. They transition quite naturally and fluidly from invoking women's sports to then mocking it on the other hand. As a person who does support and attend women's sports on a regular basis, I've never understood that. I believe that sports are not harmed by people playing for the teams that they identify with. I think that they are strengthened, and I think there are massive benefits to be had for the individuals as well. we could go through a lot of these different issues. Obviously, I have a massive issue with the crusade that we're seeing across these and other issues. That's where I stand. I hope always tried on this and other issues to use what limited platform I have to advocate for values that I think will lead the country in a better direction. And I can only pledge that I will try to do that. That's all I can say. I don't know. That's where I stand. Jayar, any thoughts?
Understood, John. I appreciate you bringing it up and talking about it because it's an important topic that many folks are addressing right now. So this is the one thing I just want to add as far as just the topic of this. I agree with you on everything that you said, but also I just hope we, in general, as society, as people who think a certain way or who also look to advocate for certain folks who don't have as much of a voice, is to lead with compassion, lead with respect, and then after discussions are had, if disagreements are had, if details about something is being discussed, continue to lead with that same assumption that the people that you're discussing them with also are looking for the best outcome. That's all that I hope for, because I think once assumptions are made about people's intent, that's when we're in these political discussions that many politicians have to say, you believe that, and then therefore, since you believe that, that means you're trying to do this. Well, maybe if you fully say what you're trying to say and fully get out your points, maybe we can come to the conclusions and the best discussion basis types of policies, types of conversations we can have. And then when you do, maybe we can all respect each other. That's what's broken down so much. That's what we've lost. And then that's when conversations turn from factual based to just emotional based. I hope that changes.
Yeah, I agree with you. Admittedly, there's a lot of pressure being put on people. Not only are the stakes in these and other issues incredibly high and people feel them quite personally and understandably so, but there's also so much that gets said. How could anyone keep up with all of it? How could anyone, like I just mentioned, my ignorance on a lot of different issues. I try to patch that in where I can, but I can't do everything simultaneously. I can't know everything that everybody says about anything because there's so much out there. I am reminded though of, I'm probably gonna butcher the exact wording, so I apologize for that. But a great quote from the late great Michael Brooks, which is, be compassionate with people and ruthless with systems. I think that there's a lot of pressures online and on social media to be vicious with individual people. And that goes for literally everyone, including me, by the way. I can be quite vicious against people that I disagree with. And that's not necessarily always the best thing. As I said, I am flawed. I have a great many flaws, as all of you are probably thinking of. So anyway, those are our thoughts. I will try to maintain in my head that I cannot simply assume that everyone knows what I have said, where I have stood, how I have weighed in, who I have platformed. It is crazy to assume that everyone can do that, as complex as the world is. So I will try to do what I have always done, which is never be shy about stating my opinion, state it boldly, take the stance that I think needs to be taken. That's what I will do. Now that said, we do have a lot of news to get to. We're gonna try to get through as much of it as we can. So thank you everyone for joining us on the show today. If you wouldn't mind hitting the like button and sharing the stream, that would be great as we launch into this. But with that, why don't we jump into our first topic? Yesterday was the 4th of July, and the holiday went pretty much the way that it always does. People gathered for picnics, got together with family, set off fireworks, and unfortunately, one of the other ways that the holiday often goes is that people paid with their lives for this tradition. In Michigan, 1 person is dead, 9 injured in fireworks explosions. A woman died after a firework struck her. Nearby cars and homes were damaged. 9 people injured. Injuries from minor to critical. Lots of property damage as well. This wasn't the only state where someone literally died. In Texas, 1 person was reported dead, 4 others hurt Tuesday morning when a house caught on fire from the fireworks explosion. So that wasn't even a direct hit from a firework. It was just, it sets fires, and some people who might not be participating at all in what's going on might lose their lives as a result of it. There were also injuries, which are tragic, but also feel like they could have potentially been avoided. Lake County, Illinois Sheriff's Office responded to a gathering on Sunday after it was reported that a 58-year-old man was injured while handling commercial grade fireworks. According to the Sheriff's Office, he lit a firework which did not detonate as expected. The man looked into the tube housing the firework and it discharged, striking his face and then exploding. He sustained major injuries to the head and remained in critical condition as of Monday. The man reportedly did not have a permit to detonate the several fireworks he brought to the 4th of July weekend gathering. Of course, laws are gonna vary between areas on that, but who has a permit for literally any of this? I take this very personally because I live in LA, Inglewood specifically, which I believe, based on my personal experience, is the firework capital of the literal universe. And I like fireworks, Jayar. I do. I went to a concert recently where professionals set off fireworks and it was cool. However, people go crazy with them and it just does so much damage. Some of it hard to measure, the trauma to dogs, car alarms and all that, but literal lives. So I don't know, it's a tragedy, the idea that multiple people are dead as a result of celebration, but what do you think?
I mean, we talked about animals, this is something that isn't new. First off, we always talked animals in the past. Oh, dogs may be hiding in the bathroom in the tub when these things happen. And it became like, oh, Fido's being crazy. Oh, look, she's running again, And then as we've had an expansion of reality and seeing how other people react to it, there's humans behind these fears and medical conditions and just anxiety based off of what it is. I experienced it with my own family. So we find ourselves running from fireworks every year. I don't know if every city is like this, but I was just driving home last evening and I wish I could have scanned the city. I went through multiple parts of the city. I was driving for a while and it was nonstop, constant from every direction, front, back, side, and diagonal. And it was like, if there was a middle line of some kind of firefight that was happening in a war zone, that's what it looked and felt like. And this is the celebration of our freedom. And again, fireworks, at least correct me if I'm wrong, I think are supposed to emulate the look and sound of a war. Because we battled for our freedom.
Basically, yeah.
So we're shooting off things that sound like war. And again, some of these folks be like, patriotism, America, F yeah. Support the troops. What was that? Support the troops. Maybe folks that had been in war situations, direct combat, and had PTSD, that relive some of these moments, that go through so many deep, dark thoughts that bring these things back up, that just simply freak them out. And again, we talk about the medical, our medical insurance and how it doesn't help vets. Even just normal folks that haven't been in war, sometimes people have these responses. And all that I would hope to see, and again, maybe this isn't just LA, I hope it's not just LA, there's something crazier because we already have our wildfire issues on top of it. But I would just hope that people start considering others. Because I do think there's a vast amount of people who just don't consider it or realize the effects that they have. But people are talking about this more. I think it's starting to catch on. Maybe pay attention and just the simple thing of being kind to your neighbors. Because this is serious stuff for many people.
Yeah, I love the optimism there about it catching on. The issue is that it only takes a few people for an entire neighborhood to be taken over. Look, it's not like there's not a benefit. I'm sure people who enjoy it, I can literally go out in my street and every direction there are fireworks going off simultaneously. That isn't even the major issue for me. Yes, it traumatizes my dog, which is a major issue. Yes, I couldn't go to sleep until super late at night, and so I'm literally exhausted as we record this. It's not just that it's the 4th of July night. People maybe this is different in different areas, but fireworks go off for literally weeks in LA. And I don't mean, hey, a firework, like a thing goes up and then there's purple sparklies. I mean a small explosive that is set off in the middle of the day every 30 minutes for weeks. Pointlessly, needless. It's just a loud noise, that's all it is. If you just want a loud noise, you can turn up your speaker and you can put your ear to it. I don't know why people need to do this, literally setting off car alarms and traumatizing people, and I just don't understand. All of this seems so abundantly clear too. The fact that so many people still think that it needs to be done, potentially at the cost of people's lives, I don't understand. There's no solution to this. I don't have anything productive coming out of this, Jayar. It just annoys me every year. And it's a tragedy that so many people lost their homes, lost their cars, are in hospitals, or died as a result of this. Everybody was waiting on the 4th of July to see how different people are going to usher in the day a tweet, maybe a short video. How's your celebrity crush gonna post on Instagram about it? Well, I had to take a look at what Donald Trump was saying, and he re-bleeded this: 81 million votes, and I've never seen a pro-Biden hat, shirt or flag in my life. F Biden. That's what he sent out. Oh, F Biden and F you if you voted for him, said the former president of the United States, saying true, no Biden hats anywhere, never seen one. So if you were wondering if Trump is gonna transition to trying to appeal to Biden voters, yeah, in a really weird way he is, F them. Anyway, he also put this out, man, they love using AI to put Trump in like whatever situation definitionally he'd be least likely to ever be in. He's on the front lines of a war, Trump. He's leading the troops in at the cost potentially of his own body. Who thinks literally any of this, Jayar?
What is the point? I'm sorry, John. I was biting my tongue to not cut you off here. What is the point of this? So, former president of the United States, former failed businessman, current racist. So as this all goes through, and these constant images of him being in these random situations with like revolutionary soldiers, what does that do? What does that do for your issues with inflation, with your mortgage and rent costs, with healthcare, with education, with your children, with any of the stuff that we all talked about was supposed to be these big issues for midterm elections that Republicans came up short on? What does Donald F. and Trump standing on some fire ground with a bunch of random folks behind him with bayonets, what does that have to do with all those issues that you guys were complaining about? Because some of those issues are very much real. What is it that Donald Trump will do about it because he's standing on a flaming ground in an AI image? If you put John Iadarola's head on a random body in the middle of a flaming field fighting some unknown force, what does that do? Does that suddenly mean, oh, there's an image of John Iadarola on a random body doing things that he would never do because he wasn't around in 1760? I don't care. But either way, that somehow is a political message from a former president, because he doesn't want you to think about how he's under investigation for this, that, and the third thing, and the 18 other things on top of it. He will bring it up when he says go to the streets and start fighting and shooting off your guns and try and find your political opponents. He'll bring it up then. But when it comes to putting him in office, for some reason, this image is a winner. This is the problem in this country.
Yeah, look,
one
oh, what?
No, one of many. I said this is the problem.
Oh, one of many. I thought you said one more thing. Look, do I want to see that image of me as the general? Sure, I think that's what everyone is thinking. Everyone was already thinking it. But yeah, look, is this utterly irrelevant? Yes. So apologies for that. It is. But in a different way, is it? Why is reality so distasteful to everyone? Donald Trump multiple times had the opportunity, some would say the responsibility and the duty, to serve his country, and he avoided doing that. That's fine. Lots of people avoided service for a number of different reasons, some of them for principles. Does anyone think that that's why he didn't go? People were asking, if you zoom in on that image, do you see the bone spurs? And I think that's a great point. He specifically avoided serving. Maybe don't pretend that he's a soldier. But again, just generally, we are in a time when fewer and fewer people care about what is real. He retruthed, I should say. Marjorie Greene, I'm only gonna read the beginning of this. We had world peace for 4 years under President Trump, and we desperately need it again. And to that, follow-up question, Representative Greene, what in the hell are you talking about? We dropped tens of thousands of bombs. We killed so many people across multiple states. There were multiple invasions and colonial actions, and what is world peace to you? And that's not a rhetorical question. It's an interesting thing to think about. What rates as world peace to her? Is Syria still being bombed in world peace? Yes. Afghanistan, is Yemen being, yeah, all of those things are still happening. She goes on to say, we have to stop spending American tax dollars killing other people in foreign wars. What she means there is, we should not support the Ukrainians, because supporting the Ukrainians means that we don't have world peace. Not supporting the Ukrainians and the Ukrainians being butchered is world peace to Marjorie Greene. We just need to be clear about where we stand, and that is very much where she stands. It also appears to be where Donald Trump stands, but maybe we'll find out more about that if, unfortunately, he becomes president again.
It's a simple question. I wish someone would ask her. What does world peace mean? It's a very simple question that you ask. What does that mean? What does world peace look like? Is that based off of what you tell your followers? Because, by the way, again, one of the big problems many political opponents had was how we withdrew from Afghanistan under this president that they don't like. His name is Joe Biden. So if we withdrew from Afghanistan after Donald Trump's 4 years of world peace, what was happening in Afghanistan? Was it peace? I don't know the chronological order for how things work, I guess, when you stop a war as badly as it would have gone to stop it and start it and continue it for the 20 years that it went on. Leaving it, for whichever way you believe about it, that's not my point here. It does mean that there was a war still happening.
Yeah, 100%. Anyway, we're gonna take our first break, everyone. When we come back, times are tough for Ron DeSantis, but the way that it's tough for him actually might be a harbinger of how it's gonna be tough for a lot of other Republicans coming up soon. We'll talk about that more and more after this. Okay, everyone, thank you all for being here. Hit the like button if you haven't already. We're gonna jump into more news, starting with this.
Look, right now in national polling, we are way behind. I'll be the first to admit that, okay? I believe in being really blunt and really honest. It's an uphill battle. I don't think it's an unwinnable battle by any stretch, okay? But clearly, Donald Trump is the runaway front runner.
So that is Steve Cortez, not just like an aide to Ron DeSantis, his campaign manager. And you followed some races. You know how detached from reality the statements of most of these people are. They never want to admit to any weakness. So how much weakness does there need to be that the campaign manager is willing to own up to it? What Steve Cortez just did there should be the default. That should just be, yeah, no, we're down, obviously, but that's not how it goes. And he's willing to admit that it's not just generalized issues with the campaign, but he also gets into the swing states too. So take a look at this.
I'm of the view, though, that given that the polls are much tighter in the first states that really matter out of the gate, national polls aren't terribly relevant. You know, we pay attention, but they don't drive strategy for us. I'm of the belief that once we really get his story out there, and thankfully we have the resources to do that. He's campaigning with a just frenetic pace already. So I think once we get that out there, my view is that we're going to close this gap. I'm of the firm view that it is a two-man race. There's a lot of other folks in the race who I think, most of whom are not truly running for president. They're running for other positions or for sort of branding reasons or other. And I think in some cases, frankly, some nefarious reasons that they're running. I think it's a two-man race. We're clearly the underdog. We are clearly fighting uphill, but I think we have an amazing story to tell.
Well, that was fascinating for a number of different reasons. Admit the issues that they have with certain states. He says that they can like close the gap or whatever. As Neil O'Neill says, then if you want to close that gap, you're going to need to start committing more crimes brazenly, because that's the only thing that improves your standing in the Republican primary. He mentions there, Jayar, that some of them are running for branding reasons. I think Steve Cortez is 100% right there. That's definitely the case, but also for nefarious reasons. I have an idea of what he might mean there. I've sort of said similar things, but I don't know if you noticed that.
I did.
What do you make of Steve Cortez there?
I'm not sure what it could mean. I'm curious what you think, because I did also, of course, notice the positioning purposes, other positions. We always know there's the next prominent person is kind of, or next few prominent folks within a primary may be vying for a position of VP. We see it. It's not a political party thing. It happens with Democrats and Republicans. And if independents had enough folks running, it would be the same there too. But as far as Cortez talking about some of the nefarious reasons, I don't know if he thinks that maybe folks are in the race to try and sabotage DeSantis, take some numbers down. But this is the primary. We're not talking like a general election when maybe someone lost the primary from a particular party, then they decide to run as an independent and we'll steal some of those votes. We could see that as nefarious reasons, but we're not even at that stage yet. Or just sabotage within the primary. I don't know. I'm actually very curious. That stuck out to me, but I didn't know what he meant.
I mean, I would suspect. Look, I think that some of them are running to take support away from some other anti-Trump Republican. I think that they expect and probably will get some sort of reward for that. I can't prove that. It's just my hunch, but that's what I think. Anyway, as of right now, in terms of the polls, DeSantis he's been worse off against Trump over the past few months, but he's not gaining. Whether he's campaigning at a frenetic pace or not, I don't even know. I hope that he's not campaigning at a frenetic pace, because if he is, then this looks worse for him, Steve Cortez. But anyway, he was on this show with Crypto Lawyer or whatever. Crypto Lawyer did a poll, asking, did Steve move the needle for you? Based on what he said, if you had to vote tonight, who gets your vote? And DeSantis got 18.9% of the vote. So I don't know if Steve Cortez is the winner of a surrogate that maybe they would hope. By the way, in terms of the current state of Ron DeSantis and his chances, I loved this particular headline. Gamblers on betting website rank DeSantis's chance of winning presidency as worse than Gavin Newsom, who isn't even running.
Jesus.
And honestly, that may seem ridiculous, but if you had to put $100 on which of them has a better chance of becoming president in a year, I think the smart money's on Gavin Newsom. Jayar?
Yeah, you'll lose either way, because obviously, as they point out, he's not running. But as we've talked before, I think it was with you on here about the potential of Gavin Newsom then eventually getting into these types of things. That's why his name even came up in the first place. But it's a good illustrative factor about what it is that Ron DeSantis is faced with. And by the way, maybe other Republicans or people that are looking to jump into this race would actually take note of how this is happening. I believe, of course, it's partially about his crazy policies, but those crazy policies mirror a lot of times the rest of the Republican field, specifically Donald Trump. But the problem is so many Republicans, because I guess the way politics are, is once one person is a strongman bully type of candidate and he whips you into line, you now find yourself bowing to him because we have to have the loyalty test, loyalty constantly. So eventually at some point you have to break that loyalty, because this is still a race. These are still competitors. You're still trying to get this same position. And since you've now laid your entire political career behind one guy and saying that you're behind him no matter what he ever does, as he does things, you will continue to be kept under his wing. Lindsey Graham tried to wiggle out of it a couple times, and he finds himself getting booed at MAGA events. It's a lose-lose situation. But now that you've committed your complete loyalty to this guy and you're no one else but him, why would they go with you when they could have the real one?
And speaking of which, by the way, that point about the running as a branding exercise, here's the thing. Some of those other ones are running as a branding exercise, but they at least are aware of the fact that they're running as a branding exercise. The thing about DeSantis is that it increasingly appears that he is unknowingly running as a branding exercise to be branded by Donald Trump as a pudding-fingered weenie. And that is the brand that DeSantis is probably gonna have coming out of this thing. It just might not have been his intent. Anyway, let's dive into specific policies that could hurt him and other Republicans with this video.
I have greater concerns about the 6-week abortion ban.
Tell me about that.
I think if he made it clear that he's a states' rights person and that he's not looking to kind of pass a national law in this regard, I would be less concerned.
Not everyone in their Twitter orbit agrees on his tactics, but these three do think Florida's new 6-week abortion ban is bad.
I think that's dangerous. That's something that I cannot get behind, and I don't think that's going to bode well for his presidential campaign. I think that might be a real impediment to bringing in moderate women.
So those are not libs. Those aren't like Bernie Sanders fans or whatever. Both of those women interviewed by CNN, as well as others, are already fans of Ron DeSantis. They are parents and mothers who want Ron DeSantis to be president. And even they are turned off by how radical he is on the topic of abortion. And this is a problem for Ron DeSantis. It should also be a problem for Donald Trump, since he's the guy that got Roe v. Wade absolutely destroyed. But somehow it's hurting Ron DeSantis more. But it's not just gonna hurt them, Jayar. There's a lot of fears from Republican strategists that in the same way that the midterms were tanked for a number of different issues, but abortion was one of the biggest ones, their efforts to take over the Senate coming up in 2024, where they only have to defend like 10 seats, they have a lot of opportunities to pick up states. they might ruin that opportunity or limit the gains that they do get, specifically because of how radical they are on this topic. What do you make of that?
It seemed like an open and shut type of thing, just even from when the leak from the Supreme Court about their upcoming decision at the time about Roe v. Wade and women's rights, abortion rights in the country and all that. Just when that came up, there was enough people going, oh, this is a killer for them, because we know the numbers. It's the thing, when you look at things like stats, numbers, the general opinion of the country about things, then you'll understand maybe where you land. Again, representatives of the constituents is what elected officials are, not dictators of policy and what people should want. Now, maybe they're trying to convince folks of it with maybe some kind of evidence backing it. But when you're just saying, this is what we're gonna do because this is what I like, this is what my belief system is, and F everything else that you have to say, that begins to be turning some people off, especially when it comes to something that across the board, across all political lines, there are people who absolutely utilize this healthcare service type of situation, and then you brush it off as some 20-something irresponsible girl, which, by the way, she deserves it too. But once we're at the stage now where it's hate towards the people who are supposed to vote for you, you can't win that way. I don't know how they think this is going to work. And actually, the degree to which they didn't backpedal a bit or try to temper it in my mind, I was thinking, well, they must know something that I don't know, because this seems pretty straightforward. Maybe they're gonna have something about that I don't get. Maybe I'm missing something. But as we're seeing these dominoes continue to fall, and it looked like it's going this direction, I'm not sure what they expected to come from this outside of just complete and utter bullying. I guess they hope to have all three branches of government locked up, and then also, of course, have the Supreme Court making these rulings that they're making, and it's just ruled by, by force. That's their plan, and they haven't gotten there yet. We'll see.
Yeah, look, the issue is they all seem to understand. Like, if you say a year out, our ability to take over the Senate is going to be severely hurt by our position on abortion, you are admitting you understand that across many, many states, including red states, people don't agree with you. And the fact that you persist in pushing it anyway, like that your only strategy is, let's not talk about it as much. Let's do it. Let's get the judges in, but let's not talk about it as much. That's an interesting relationship with democracy, I suppose. And some Republicans are trying to save the others. Mitch McConnell is saying, let's not vote on any kind of federal thing. Like, we don't need to do anything like that. But Lindsey Graham was like, no, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do a 15-week federal ban. And you might think, well, but then aren't you saying you don't have any, like, you used to love states' rights. Now you don't care about states' rights. No. Lindsey Graham with his 15-week federal ban is allowing for some flexibility on the part of states. If they want to go more draconian, they can. They just can't be less. So it's interesting how freedom works in that particular case. But this is almost certainly going to hurt them in the presidential election as well as all these other elections. It should, because it is one of the most important issues. It's just amazing how little ability they have to actually learn from any of this.
I think they're missing how much people say, maybe politically where they believe are people they support. But then when they actually have to go through with some of the things that they look to have rights of, they expect to have those rights.
Yeah, people like rights, especially from the people who say that they'll guarantee them. Anyway, we're gonna move on to other news, mix things up a little bit, lots to get to. Let's jump into this. State police in West Virginia have now been accused of, for years and years, using hidden cameras to spy on women as well as minors during the training at one of their academies. And we wanna give you all of the details. The details that are in some cases horrendous, and in other cases, incredibly convenient for the accused. So among the allegations of misconduct, which are said to have taken place over literally a decade, are a hidden camera system set up in the women's locker room and showers at the West Virginia Police Academy. Some of the possible victims are minors who took part in a junior program. There are apparently hundreds, if not thousands, of total victims. Now, I know what you're all thinking, okay? These are minors that apparently pedophiles are trying to get naked video of. So clearly this is like, don't go to Fox News right now. I'm sure that they are talking about it because they're consistent and everything, but no, they're not gonna care at all. It's the cops, it's fine, they can do whatever they want. An attorney representing the women in the suit said that the police are a hostile, misogynistic, toxic environment that's not just male dominated, it's anti-woman, and you can sort of understand why they would think that based on this. It's amongst many other allegations against the West Virginia State Police, including misuse of state and federal dollars, office affairs, illegal overtime practices, drunken fights, sexual assault as well. Now, what apparently is the case is they say that the employee behind the hidden camera was already dead, and that 3 troopers found the thumb drive and were immediately so horrified by it that they jerked it out of the computer, threw it on the floor, and started stamping on it. So the person who did it's dead and can't suffer any consequences. The evidence has been destroyed. All of this is plausible and highly convenient. Jayar, what do you think?
Absolutely. I've been seeing this story happen for a while, and I was wondering at what point it's finally going to blow up, because I was talking about it before, and how this is, it's such an open and shut general case that many political talkers would say is happening with certain people that they're targeting: groomers, pedophiles, wrong folks in locker rooms and bathrooms. Because again, we're back to this same trans issue. So trans women will be run up in our children's locker rooms or in women's bathrooms. And you know what they do there? They actually don't ask that question, because that's what you're supposed to then go and assume about afterwards. The fear is they're gonna walk in. Then once they walk in, what happens? But in reality, we have situations like this where seemingly damn near the whole police force over in West Virginia is setting up cameras in women's locker rooms and bathrooms. Children were there as well. Hid that stuff and then tried to destroy the evidence afterwards. Who is it? Who are the groomers? Who are the pedophiles? Who are the sexual assaulters? It's these folks. Yeah. And also across in my time, and many female friends I've had have told me stories of being harassed, yelled at, actually assaulted, and none of them have ever told me that it was from a trans woman. It's just weird how that works. It's always men doing this to many women, in my experiences of what I've heard people telling me. But we found a way to try and convince enough people that, don't believe what you've seen and experienced your entire life. Go with what we're saying, because this will help us win seats and in Congress and in the Senate and hopefully the presidency, because we're just basing your hate off of a group of people you just don't understand. Yeah. But so stories like this, these should be front and center. Everybody that talks about groomers and pedophilia should be talking about the West Virginia police force and how dare they do this to our children. They also don't talk about all the priests that have been doing this for decades.
That is
so
weird.
If you actually care about these things, I would think you talk about these big stories of it happening. Haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, we need like a recurring segment of, hey, right-wing media, did you see this in the news? You want to talk about it? I feel like this is sort of up their alley. I mean, after all, the police are sacred. They're the heroes. Wouldn't we want to root out these saboteurs inside of their ranks, one would think? Weird. Anyway, with that said, we are going to take our second break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the fallout from last week's Supreme Court decision, specifically Harvard under pressure right now to end legacy admissions. We're going to be giving you the details on that, as well as patriot communities after this. Okay, everybody, let's jump back into some more news. Last week, the Supreme Court effectively ended affirmative action at colleges and universities, although some schools, including Harvard, say that there are ways that they believe they can still allow some considerations around race to influence the selection process. But other major influences on their selection process are now being challenged in the wake of that Supreme Court decision, specifically legacy admission. There's a civil rights group that's challenging that at Harvard University, saying the practice discriminates against students of color by giving an unfair boost to the mostly white children of alumni. So look, this is and has been for a long time a very interesting component of this. The right is saying they want to get racial considerations out of admissions to colleges, but let's be clear, they want to get certain racial factors out of that. Legacy, which has an obvious, indisputable racial component, they're perfectly happy with for the most part, but it is now being challenged. Lawyers for Civil Rights, a nonprofit based in Boston, is behind this. Group's executive director says, why are we rewarding children for privileges and advantages accrued by prior generations? Your family's last name and the size of your bank account are not a measure of merit and should have no bearing on the college admissions process, which I think is totally accurate. Now, I can understand from the college's point of view why they would consider it to have merit. They want that money. They're hoping to continue to get it for their massive bloated endowments. But in terms of your actual ability to be a good student and all that, How does that make anywhere near the sense to include than the racial considerations did? So anyway, Jayar, this is being challenged now. What do you make of it?
I went to USC, you guys know that. It's one of those prestigious colleges, universities, private institution, and there's plenty of people whose parents went there and then grandparents went there as well, and great grandparents went there, and however long back they can possibly see it. Many schools like that. It's not very uncommon. So if that's the case and people openly talk about how their dad went there, my mom went there, and then my grandfather went there and all that, why would they bring that up? Why would they talk about how they're continuing the tradition of it? And if the tradition of that is from back in 1905, that your people went there and then you get in again because it's a legacy, we openly talk about that as if it's not a part of the admission process. But then flip it if there's other parameters that try to equal that out. So if your great-great-grandfather went there, at the time that he went there, were black folks allowed to go to school? Were black folks allowed to learn the same things you were learning? And by the way, I always hear things like, we've progressed so far in this country. We used to be there was racist policies and people back in the day, but we've come so far. So if we've come so far, which we've progressed, why is there such anger towards that progression? And by the way, at what point, what event in our history made racism go away? What one event stopped it? Which date did it stop? Since we're talking about how it just stopped, because something like a general society having a belief system, which by the way is worldwide. Racism and discrimination biases are worldwide. And whichever group has more power over the systems, over others, are the ones that dictate how that power is handed out. And in our particular case, it was white Americans that showed up and did certain things and put the system in a certain way. That's why there's this systemic racism problem we have, is because it was put in the system originally. If you don't think the system originally excluded certain folks, I guess you're living in Florida school systems, because it's obvious. If not, you have to say that racism and that slavery just didn't happen. That is a system that was put into place that had certain people seen as less than human. At what point did general society decide to stop thinking that black folks were less than human? When did they stop thinking that? And then why did everyone else suddenly believe it? Why are people still getting killed for being a certain person? It still happens. You can't say it just doesn't exist. So now in college admissions like this, if you think it's a problem to have legacies or having affirmative action be something that we have to actually address, you're ignoring that we had the exact opposite system in place before. If people could have more of a conversation rather than just saying it's unfair, why? What is it that happened before? There's an evening playing ground here that we're trying to get to, and has nothing to do with eliminating your chances, because your chances are still there. Our system is still in place. I think people can have a general, honest conversation if they weren't worried about power structures and the battle over the few dollars left that aren't in billionaires' hands.
Jayar,
sorry, that was
a lot of good points there.
Sorry. Yeah, it was really
raised a lot of points that I wish I could follow up. I just will. You asked a question, and I don't think it was rhetorical. So when racism ended, I've often been told by members of the right wing was when Obama was elected the first time. So just to be clear, so jot that down. That's when racism ended, not just in America, but around the globe.
Sounds like a joke. People really think that stuff.
Some people really do. It's insane. But anyway, I just want to throw out a couple more facts. Apparently, according to this challenge, 70% of Harvard's donor-related and legacy applicants are white. It is overwhelmingly white. And being a legacy student obviously has an effect on your ability of getting into school. Does anyone know how much of an effect it has? Like how much it raises the odds that you'll get accepted? Just the fact that you were born to the right person. What do you think? It's like, these are really, really selective school. 10%? I think it's like a 30% improvement. It raises your odds by 6 times. That's insane. Like if another student cured cancer, maybe they would be on the same level as the person who just has a mom who went to the college or something. If you were USC or whatever, you have pride in USC. You'd want the next generation to go to USC. Why does that mean that you automatically let them in? Wouldn't you expect that the kid who came out of USC and then went on to have kids of themselves would be so awesome that their kid would already have a leg up? And it would just be an extra honor to have them be there. I also, before we move on though, I do want to just reassure everyone, because it's probably concerns. When people hear that I went to the University of Connecticut, there's obviously suspicion that I must be legacy because how normal people can't get into the University of Connecticut. I want to reassure you, it was not legacy. I'm a genius. That's how I got in. Anyway, also they accept like 90% of the people.
Tough school.
Anyway, no, it was a good school. I really loved you.
It actually is a good school. Absolutely is.
I like it, even though I'm not a big fan of basketball, weirdly enough. Okay, with that said, we need to jump into one more topic. So let's talk about it. A controversial new, that B-roll is amazing. A controversial new housing development in Gastonia, North Carolina is going to be requiring that residents be true patriots. And how that's going to be measured, we don't exactly know, but we do know one way it's going to be evaluated, and that is that they are going to have to fly the American flag on their properties. This is, the neighborhood, by the way, is called 1776 Gastonia. Just if you wanted to know everything about this in 2 words. It's for homeowners 55 plus. So if you are a 45-year-old veteran who flies the American flag and has always considered yourself a patriot, kick rocks, you're not wanted. But anyway, the patriots will be required to fly the US flag on a pole provided and maintained by the subdivision. So that's very nice, saves money. Each community, there will be more than one, will also donate a home with no mortgage, free of cost to a wounded veteran through the nonprofit Building Homes for Heroes. No word on whether that 45-year-old vet could get one. That is a really interesting, I guess, thing. Generally, these housing developments will do something like that. Usually they'll have a unit or two that's for like, people with very low income or something. Giving it specifically to a veteran is good. Veterans often get left behind, But anyway, when it comes to like the flag thing and the requiring patriotism, my issue isn't just that seems highly weird, but also whose patriotism? What is patriotism? First of all, every single person watching this knows exactly what they mean by patriotism, the 1776 Gastonia. But I would just like to point out that I have a concept of patriotism. I feel like from my perspective, it's just as valid as anyone else's. Why is it that mine doesn't count? Jayar, you probably have an idea of what it means to be patriotic. I would just like to say before you weigh in, you're wrong. It's whatever conservatives say. What do you think?
Yeah, there's this, we talk about how people complain that one group that maybe they don't like took over this word. Well, this is definitely one of those situations because there's no, of course, someone's one true to it. But look, there's a definition. I know people like to look these things up. Patriotism is the quality of being patriotic, devotion to and vigorous support for one's country, devotion to and vigorous support. So if you're forced into devotion and vigorous support and the quality of being patriotic about something, is it patriotism? Are you patriotic if someone says you have to be patriotic? Yeah. Do you really have a devotion to the country? Actually, for people who want that kind of devotion and support from folks to be so patriotic, maybe for the strength of the country or making sure that no matter what happens, they have the country's back, don't you think they should like that and do it on their own so it's true actual devotion instead of force? So maybe when things get tough, they don't go, yeah, there's this flag flying in front of my house, but I really don't care about this place.
Yeah.
Which one do you really want? What's the purpose of patriotism? Is it so you can show people and make them see this illusion of patriotism, which is what this would be? Or is it because you want people to actually have some kind of dedication and devotion to their country, which maybe they'd provide certain things to it because they love the country so much? It's weird. You can very easily just maybe set up a system and maybe have people love the place that they live rather than telling them how they should feel. It's odd.
Yeah, look, again, we're engaged. A lot of politics is, even if not explicitly, about how we define these different words. Freedom does not have one meaning, rights don't have one meaning, all of these, which is why when people, make like entire documentaries about what does this one word mean, it kind of belies a misunderstanding of how language works. Obviously, we all define this very differently. And by the way, there could be other components to this that perhaps will eventually come out. If it's just the flag, I think that's weird. I think that's needless. But compared to what a lot of other HOAs do, like there is a lot of regulation on exactly what color your house is, exactly what your landscaping looks like, all of that. I would file this as a weird particular case of a bigger issue, which is enforced conformity with financial penalties if you don't comply with it. I think it's a general problem that needs to be dealt with. I would also tell people, by the way, it's been a week or two since I've encouraged someone to watch an episode of the John Oliver Show. Their show on HOAs was really, really good, by the way. I would definitely watch that. If you haven't lived in an HOA, you don't know what they're like and how far they sometimes go, you gotta watch that episode because it's crazy. Any final thoughts for you, Jayar?
Yeah, just last thing, because I was thinking also, if people have certain ideas and ways that they want to progress the country, it doesn't mean that they hate it. That's what we've always done. There's things that have changed. If again, we talked about the systemic racism and all those things in our systems of seeing people as humans. If we didn't progress and change that, maybe some folks wouldn't be as patriotic to this country. Like policies and things that actually change and affect people's lives help that. Forcing it seems like it's backwards.
You would think. Well, that's unfortunately all the time we have for the first hour of the show. Thank you to those on the linear platforms listening to the podcast. As always, we appreciate your support. More to come in the aftermath. We'll see you after this. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Iadarola. I'll see you soon.